What if the real reason you feel empty is because you've spent your whole life trying to be someone else, trying to be good enough, calm enough, smart enough, lovable enough, trying to hide the chaos inside you just to keep the peace around you? And maybe, just maybe, happiness always felt out of reach. Not because you're broken, but because you were never told the truth. Because no one ever told you that happiness isn't something you chase, it's something you remember. In this video, we're going to uncover something quietly powerful, not in a loud, motivational way, but in a soul level. This explains everything kind of way. What Carl Jung shared about finding true happiness is not some feel-good slogan. It's not a morning affirmation or a 5-step plan. It's raw, it's honest, and it touches the deepest part of why you've always felt like something was missing even when life looks okay on the outside. This isn't about theories. This is about you, the real you, the you behind the mask, the you who's been hurting quietly while trying to hold it all together. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to find yourself. And for that, you need to hear this. If something in your heart is already stirring, or if a part of you is whispering, stay with this, then you're exactly where you need to be. And if you find pieces of yourself in this journey, subscribe. Not because someone told you to, but because you want more of this space. A space where truth feels like home. A space that's made for your healing. So take a breath. Let the world pause. This might just change how you see everything. You were never taught how to be whole. You were taught how to perform, how to adapt, how to keep people from leaving, how to minimize yourself so others would feel more comfortable. And somewhere along the way, you confused peace with silence. You mistook the absence of conflict for the presence of love. And every time someone praised you for being so easy to be around, it felt like a reward for abandoning yourself just a little more. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what if no one ever gave you that permission? What if the first time you showed your real feelings, someone called you too much? What if you grew up thinking love had to be earned by shrinking, pleasing, or disappearing? And now, here you are, an adult trying to undo what your childhood made you believe. You smile at dinners while dying inside. You nod in conversations where your soul screams no. You give more than you have and then feel guilty for needing anything back. You've mastered the art of emotional camouflage. But happiness, real, grounded, soul-level happiness, that's something you've only seen in glimpses, like sunlight breaking through clouds for just a moment. You've been chasing it in relationships, in accomplishments, in doing all the right things, but it always slips through your fingers, because it was never out there. The truth Jung pointed to was not glamorous. It was not Instagrammable. He said that happiness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration, from owning the parts of you that you were taught to reject, from making peace with the things you were told to hide, from accepting not only your light but your darkness, the anger you suppress, the shame you carry, the jealousy you don't talk about, the grief that sits in your chest like a stone. All of it belongs, and that's terrifying, isn't it? Because it means that true happiness doesn't come from becoming a better version of yourself. It comes from reclaiming the parts of you that were never allowed to exist, the parts that were shamed in childhood, the emotions you had to hide to feel safe, the desires you buried so you wouldn't be called selfish or bad. You were not born to perform. You were born to feel, to be, and to love yourself enough to stop apologizing for your humanity. This isn't about being positive all the time. It's about being real. It's about standing in front of a mirror and seeing someone sacred staring back, not because they're perfect, but because they're finally whole. There's a moment in every person's life where they realize they're tired. Not physically tired, not just emotionally drained, but soul tired, a kind of weariness that no nap, no vacation, no distraction can touch. It creeps in when you've spent years trying to hold yourself together, patching emotional wounds with surface solutions, smiling when you want to cry, forgiving too soon just to keep the peace, staying silent so no one feels uncomfortable except you. And maybe that's what brought you here, that ache that says, there has to be more than this. Carl Jung didn't just talk about happiness. He talked about the shadow, the hidden parts of us we don't want to face, the pieces we disown and pretend aren't there, the parts that say, I hate that this hurt me so much, or why do I still need love from someone who broke me? And here's the most painful truth. The longer we deny those parts of us, the more they control us. You think you're moving on, but you're still chained to an old wound. You think you've healed, but you're still flinching when someone raises their voice. You think you're fine, but you keep attracting people who treat you the way your inner child was treated. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because something inside you is still looking for the love it never got, still playing out the same story, hoping the ending will finally change. Happiness can't be built on top of self-abandonment. That's the mistake so many of us make. We think, if I just achieve this, if I just find the right person, if I just stay positive. But underneath, we're still scared, still unsure, still carrying the weight of old pain that no one ever helped us hold. Jung believed that the path to joy doesn't start with striving, it starts with descent. Not into darkness for the sake of suffering, but into truth. Into the raw, unfiltered, sometimes ugly reality of what we've survived, what we've hidden, what we've become to protect ourselves. And only when we stop running from that can we start to feel free. You're not too much, you're not too sensitive, you're not too complicated. You're just someone who's been carrying too many unspoken stories, and your soul is asking to be heard. Take a breath. You're allowed to start listening now. You don't have to forgive too quickly anymore. You don't have to pretend that what hurt you didn't. You don't have to play the role of the healer when you're the one bleeding inside. For so long, you've carried the belief that being lovable meant being easy to love, that if you were low maintenance, agreeable, and never a burden, maybe, just maybe, you'd be chosen, kept, treasured. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if being lovable was never about disappearing? What if your depth is not too much, but too rare? Carl Jung wrote about something few people dare to face. That true joy arises when we stop trying to be good in the eyes of others and instead become whole in our own. You see, we're trained from childhood to be acceptable. We learn what earns approval, what wins affection, what makes us safe. So we hide. We hide the anger that flares when we're disrespected. We hide the heartbreak that never healed. We hide the dreams we don't speak of anymore because someone once laughed or dismissed them, and without realizing it, we become strangers to ourselves. But here's the beautiful, aching paradox. Your wholeness isn't in who you've become to survive. It's in who you were before you were taught to be anything else. That child who asked questions, who laughed too loud, who cried without shame, the one who felt deeply, who wanted connection without fear, who didn't know how to pretend. That child never left. They're still inside you, waiting for you to stop punishing yourself for feeling too much, waiting for you to stop measuring your worth by someone else's inability to love properly, waiting for you to return not to who you were before the pain, but to the you who made it through the pain and still longs to feel alive. Jung didn't say that healing was comfortable. He didn't say happiness was easy. He said it required confrontation with the self, with the illusions, with the pain, and most of all, with the choice to no longer abandon yourself for the sake of being accepted by people who never saw you clearly. You are allowed to change, not into someone better, but into someone real. You are allowed to want joy without shame, to cry without apologizing, to take up space without guilt, to say, "This matters to me," even if no one else understands why. The path to happiness isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. A slow, sacred unwinding of every mask you've ever worn just to feel safe, in a world that never asked who you really were. But I see you now, and I hope you're starting to see yourself. Somewhere along the way, you became the protector, the peacekeeper, the one who noticed the tension in the room before anyone said a word. You learned to read between silences, to feel what others refused to say, to absorb the emotions around you like a sponge. And you thought that was love, that being emotionally fluent in everyone else's needs made you safe, that sacrificing your own comfort for theirs made you good. But it only made you disappear. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, becoming whole, becoming yourself. But not the self you built to survive, the one who smiles on command and says, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart. He meant the authentic self, the one buried under years of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and quiet pain. You see, somewhere deep in your being, you know what joy feels like. Not the surface kind, not the quick hit of dopamine when someone validates you, but the grounded, honest, tear in your eye kind of joy that comes from being true. True to your wants, your no's, your sacred yeses, true to your anger, your softness, your voice. But to get there, something has to break. Not you, never you, but the illusion that you ever had to earn love by becoming less of yourself. That illusion, it kept you alive once. It made you acceptable. It gave you a role to play when being your full self felt too risky. But now, it's what's suffocating you, and you feel it in the quiet moments. When the noise stops, when you're alone, when no one is asking you to be anything and you still feel that ache, that emptiness. That's not a flaw in you. That's the echo of everything you silenced for too long. Carl Jung believed the shadow, the repressed self, holds not just our darkness, but our life force, our joy, our passion, our ability to feel wildly alive. So if you're numb, tired, hollow, it's not because you're broken. It's because a part of you is still trapped in that shadow, waiting for you to say, you're allowed to exist. That rage you swallowed, it mattered. That sadness you hid, it mattered. That truth you muted to keep someone else comfortable, it mattered. Every part of you that felt inconvenient, dramatic, embarrassing, or too much, those were the pieces of your wholeness. And you've been walking this world with only fragments. It's time to call them back. Not because you need to fix yourself, but because happiness, real happiness, only lives where all of you is welcome. Even the parts you swore you'd never let anyone see. Even the parts you've been running from. You can stop running now. There's a quiet kind of grief that lives in those who had to grow up too early. The ones who learned to smile instead of speak. Who watched the people they loved fall apart and decided, I'll hold it all together. They became dependable, kind, strong. But beneath that strength was something tender. A softness that never got to rest. And that's what no one sees when they praise you for being so resilient, how tired you are of being the one who always has to be okay. Carl Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And maybe that's been happening to you. Maybe you keep ending up in relationships where you give more than you get. Maybe you chase success to feel worthy, but the finish line always moves. Maybe every time you get close to joy, something inside you whispers, this won't last. It's not bad luck. It's not weakness. It's the unconscious repeating what it knows, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You can begin to notice, to pause, to ask yourself not what do I think I should feel, but what do I actually feel? Not what do they want from me, but what do I want from this? It feels unfamiliar at first, even wrong. Because when your value has always been measured by what you do for others, choosing yourself feels like betrayal, but it's not. It's a return to the self you left behind. The one who didn't need to earn love, who didn't measure worth in productivity, who didn't need to be useful to be worthy. That version of you still lives inside, beneath the armor, behind the achievements, inside the silence, waiting. And that's the thing about healing, it's not always about doing more. Sometimes, it's about undoing, unlearning the lie that says love must be transactional, untangling your identity from other people's needs, letting go of the idea that being whole means being happy all the time. It doesn't. Being whole means being honest, being human, feeling joy and grief in the same breath. It means allowing yourself to be seen, even in the mess, even when you don't have the answers, even when your voice shakes. Especially then, you are not here to be impressive. You are here to be real. And that realness, the raw, tender truth of who you are, that's where happiness begins to grow. Not the kind of happiness that sparkles for a moment and fades, but the kind that stays, the kind that holds you, the kind that whispers, you're not too late, you're not too broken, you're just finding your way back. Somewhere deep in your chest, there's a place that still aches when people leave, even if they weren't good for you, even if the relationship was hollow or harmful, even if you were the one who walked away. It's the part of you that never learned how to let go without feeling like you were being left behind. Carl Jung understood something few dare to admit, that many of us don't want happiness, we want familiarity. We crave what feels known, even when it hurts, even when it breaks us. Because if you were raised on conditional love, inconsistency starts to feel like home. If you were taught to earn affection, silence starts to sound like safety. And so, you stay, or you chase, or you accept less than you deserve because the emptiness of being alone feels more terrifying than the pain of being unseen. But what if you weren't meant to live in emotional survival mode forever? What if the walls you built to protect yourself are now keeping you from the very thing you've always longed for? Connection, not the kind built on performance or pretending, but the real kind, where you can say, I'm not okay, and not be punished, where you can be soft without being exploited, where you don't have to shrink in order to be loved. You deserve that. And I know those words are hard to take in, because they require you to believe something radical, that you are worthy of love as you are, not when you're healed, not when you've figured everything out, not when you've earned it, but now, messy, in process, with your voice shaking and your heart still learning how to trust again. Carl Jung didn't say healing would feel good. He said it would feel true. That's different. Healing asks you to walk back into the rooms where you abandoned yourself, to sit with the versions of you that no one ever made space for, to say the things you were once punished for feeling, and then, instead of changing them, or fixing them, or judging them, you listen. You listen to the part of you that still grieves the father who wasn't there. You listen to the part of you that's still angry at the friend who betrayed your trust. You listen to the part of you that feels ashamed for staying in places where your soul withered. And you say, I get it now. I see you, and I won't leave you again. That's how it begins, not with perfect answers, but with presence. And maybe, just maybe, that's what happiness really is. Not a destination, but a reunion, a coming home to yourself, again and again and again, until one day you wake up and realize you don't need to be someone else to feel at peace in your own skin. There's a silence that only the soul understands. It's not the quiet of an empty room. It's the quiet inside you when you stop pretending, when you stop trying to be okay, when you stop smiling for the sake of others, and you finally say what's been sitting heavy in your chest for years, and maybe, for the first time, your own voice startles you. Because it's not polished, it's not diplomatic, it's not edited to make everyone else comfortable. It's honest. Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And maybe that's what this moment is. A beginning, not of a perfect life, but of an honest one. A life where you stop chasing happiness like a prize and start creating space for it like a garden. Because happiness isn't something you earn when you've healed enough. It's something that begins to rise when you stop betraying yourself. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you chip away at your peace. Every time you ignore your intuition just to be liked, you tell yourself that being accepted is more important than being you. But the soul knows. It knows when you're performing. It knows when you're surviving. It knows when the people in your life only love the edited version of you, the one that's agreeable until she's gone. And that's why it hurts so deeply. Not because you're weak, but because you're awake. You're beginning to see what's no longer sustainable. You're beginning to feel what you've long ignored. You're beginning to want more, not just for the sake of happiness, but for the sake of your life. And you deserve that. You deserve relationships where you don't have to translate your feelings into something palatable. You deserve mornings that don't begin with anxiety. You deserve moments where you laugh, not performative laughter, but the kind that erupts from your belly because, for once, nothing's weighing you down. But to get there, you'll have to choose yourself in a way you never have before. You'll have to disappoint people who benefit from your self-abandonment. You'll have to grieve the years you spent being what others needed. You'll have to face the fear that if you stop pleasing, you'll be alone. And you might be, for a while, but in that sacred solitude, something happens. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And in that remembering, comes the first real taste of peace. Not the peace of being unbothered, but the peace of being undeniably you. It's strange, isn't it? How the moment you begin to choose yourself, everything starts to shift. Not always in ways that feel good. Sometimes people pull away. Sometimes you notice how one-sided things have always been. Sometimes the loneliness gets louder before the healing does. But somewhere underneath all of that, there's something new. A quiet knowing, a soft power, a sense that for the first time in your life, you're not running, not from your pain, not from your past, and not from who you are when no one's watching. Carl Jung believed that the greatest journey a person could take was the journey inward, not to escape the world, but to live in it fully, but not the version of the world that demands your compliance. The world that blooms when you stop playing roles and start telling the truth. And here's the truth. It's okay to outgrow people who only knew the version of you that tolerated everything. It's okay to say, I can't be that person anymore. Not out of resentment, but out of reverence for your heart, your peace, your life. Because you've spent enough time negotiating your needs down to nothing. Enough time convincing yourself that crumbs were a feast. Enough time calling survival strength. And now Now, your body is tired of tensing around lies. Your soul is tired of waiting for permission to exist. You no longer want love that requires self-erasure. You want love that meets you where you are and stays. And here's the sacred truth Jung pointed toward. Until you reclaim the parts of you you've buried, you will keep mistaking pain for passion, chaos for connection, numbness for maturity. You will keep calling it fate when it's just a pattern. You will keep building your life on someone else's blueprint. But your soul wasn't made to fit inside a template. It was made to breathe, to speak, to feel everything and still choose to stay open. That is what happiness is, not a constant high, not an escape from pain, but the freedom to be fully alive in your own skin, to wake up and feel your heart beat and not apologize for its rhythm, to look in the mirror and see someone who is no longer performing, no longer pretending, no longer waiting to be enough. You already are. You always were. And now finally you remember. Maybe the healing isn't loud. Maybe it doesn't look like breakthroughs or declarations or perfectly curated transformation. Maybe it looks like you, sitting alone on the edge of your bed at midnight, breathing through a wave of sadness you used to run from. Maybe it's the text you don't send, the boundary you finally hold, the mirror you face in the morning with gentler eyes whispering, "I'm still here." Carl Jung never promised that wholeness would feel like bliss. He said it would feel like truth. And truth is messy. It's not symmetrical or easy to digest. It's not something you can package into a morning routine. It's raw, unfiltered. It breaks you open, but it also shows you who's been inside all along. The you that doesn't smile out of obligation. The you that doesn't shrink for peace. The you that holds sorrow and joy in the same breath and calls it being human. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be real, to stand in your storm and not apologize for the rain. To admit when you're hurting and still hold your own hand. To feel deeply without fearing that your depth will drive people away. If they leave, let them. That's not where love lives. Real love, the kind that heals, that expands, that stays, only finds you when you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen. And that's what Jung meant when he said the shadow must be faced. Because everything you seek is buried underneath the things you've been taught to hide. Your softness, your fury, your fear, your tenderness. These are not flaws to fix. They are keys to your freedom. And if there's a voice in you that still doubts this, that says, "But what if I lose everything?" Let me tell you this. Anything built on your silence was never solid to begin with. You won't lose your life by choosing yourself. You'll finally start living it. So breathe gently. Let your shoulders drop. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're becoming. And maybe, just maybe, this is what happiness feels like. Not fireworks, not applause, but the quiet realization that you came back to yourself, and that was always the point.